The Great Ruler Episode 123 Explanation. The Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. Compared to the Great Spiritual Academy tournament filled with cruel battles, the atmosphere in the academy was rather calm. The spiritual energy in the heavens and earth were indolently moving about. The Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy was emitting youthfulness from the breeze of wind. They had already left the academy for half a year. When Mu Chen's group joined the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, almost every single student was looking with expectation while raising their heads. However, there wasn't any news of the tournament as time passed. Thus, everyone could only unwillingly pacify their hearts and return to their daily cultivations. But, occasionally, they would raise their heads and look at the antique huge bell at the center of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. If there was any news of the tournament, the ancient bell would ring. But, regrettably, there wasn't any activity from the bell for half a year. The Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy was filled with vitality, and the academy wouldn't stop their progress for anyone. Not even Mu Chen and his group that was sent to participate in the tournament. Thus, when they left, the Colossal Spiritual Academy was still very interesting, since there were newcomers constantly appearing as they set off ripples in the academy. No matter how outstanding those newcomers and black horses were, no one could surpass that name on the heavenly ranking that had disappeared for half a year. That name was an indomitable great mountain to all the geniuses in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. That was precisely the reason why those geniuses in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had not given up. The pressure brought to them from the name was the motivation for them to keep pressing forth. Even if they failed, they would still crawl back up with excitement as they convinced themselves that they were a step closer to that name. The outcome from that resulted in more and more people cultivating in the lightning territory and the spirit convergence array. The teachers and elders of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy were gratified as their dedication in cultivation grew stronger. Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Goddess Luo Association. The current headquarters of the Goddess Luo Association was located at the center of the academy. The spiritual energy gathered there was thicker compared to the outer sector. Furthermore, there weren't many cases of mistreatment of a students' association. The headquarters of the Goddess Luo Association still had a vast cultivating field with a huge lake on both sides of the field. The spiritual fog that took form from thick spiritual energy floated on the lake, making it seem like an immortal's paradise. On the cultivating field, there were thousands of people training as they sparred with each other, and the screeches of wind that were caused by their actions constantly rang out. In just half a year, the Goddess Luo Association had grown larger. The freshmen from back then had shredded their freshness as they started to display their talents, blossoming their radiance in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. The Goddess Luo Association had already become the full deserving title of being the strongest students' association. On the cultivating field, there were many figures moving about, and, occasionally, those members of the Goddess Luo Association would direct their sights on the central region during their training. The main reasons for this were naturally the two beautiful silhouettes in the center. One of those two beautiful silhouettes were extremely familiar. One was Su Xian's younger sister, Su Linga. In half a year, this pampered girl had matured a lot, yet she still wore a scarlet red dress, being exceptionally eye-catching. Her graceful figure had a marvelous curve to it, is extremely attractive. Su Linga joined the Goddess Luo Association not long after Mu Chen's party went into the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Naturally, the association was extremely welcoming on her joining. After all, Su Linga pretty much had a decent amount of fame in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. There were many that admired her, and her joining would make the Goddess Luo Association stronger as well. As for the other figure, it was Yu Shi that came from the Northern Spiritual Academy before Mu Chen embarked for the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Although she was young and her age was more or less similar to Sunna, her fame was extremely resounding in the Goddess Luo Association. After joining the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, she had displayed astonishing talent as she had already leaped to the second of the spirit ranking. Whereas the first was a record left behind by the past Mu Chen. Although her speed was a little inferior compared to Mu Chen's, she was still breathtaking. If Mu Chen was the representative from his batch, then Yu Shi was the representative for hers. Who knows, she might replace Mu Chen's position after 2 years. But without a doubt, Mu Chen would have left the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy by that time. Currently, Yushi was sitting on a huge rock located at the corner of the cultivating field as she lifted a rock with both of her arms. Her green long dress made her figure seem even more slender as her charming face attracted many gazes over. In the Goddess Luo Association, there was a ranking of 3 fairies. Sulinga and she took the first and second, while Sana took the last. However, Sana spent most of her time practicing spiritual arrays. Although her spiritual energy cultivation wasn't too outstanding, she displayed astonishing talent in terms of spiritual arrays. In half a year, there was already a huge improvement in her cultivation regarding spiritual arrays. Some time ago, she managed to accidentally defeat a senior that was ranked 10 on the heavenly rankings, causing quakes in the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. Thus, the seniors weren't the strongest in the Goddess Luo Association, but these 3 beautiful girls. Yushi sat on the ice-cold rock as she had just finished her cultivation. She slowly bent her straightened legs as she placed her lovable chin on her knees. Her jet-black eyes were directed on the bell, a mountain in the center of the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy, and paid no attention towards the surrounding admiring gazes that were directed at her. Beside Yushi, Sulinga had also raised her head, looking at the bell. Her usual lively expression was quiet as she looked as if she was submerged in her thoughts. "Haha, you guys are thinking of Mu Chen again." A gentle laughter came from the side. Yushi and Sulinga abruptly looked over as they saw Yi Qingling standing at the side as she was looking at them full of smiles. "Who's thinking of that guy?" Sulinga pouted as she continued, "I was just thinking about my older sister and the rest." No. Yushi, however, had her face flushed red as she quickly waved her hands in denial. However, it wasn't too convincing as her gaze had been evading. To be exact, she had only seen Mu Chen once, but she was already too familiar with the latter's name. Ever since she entered the Northern Spiritual Academy, she had been hearing stories about Mu Chen, and now that she came to the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy, she was still hearing that dazzling youth. But still, she had to admit that when she first came to the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy, she saw the battle for the Heavenly Rankings Overlord position between Mu Chen and Shen Sangshan, and her heart was shaken. At that time, the figure that was filled with fighting intent had left behind a shadow in her heart. That day, Mu Chen's appearance was too dignified, many girls had his figure branded in their hearts. "Big Sister Yi, do you think that Big Brother Mu Chen and the rest could get into the finals?" Yushi hesitated for a moment but still couldn't hold herself back to ask the question. Yi Qingling sat down beside them as she looked at the bell. She pondered for a moment before answering, "I heard that the competition for this tournament is the most intense in the past decades." The face of Yushi and Sulinga changed a little as they bit on their lips. They were well aware of how powerful Mu Chen and his team were, but at the same time, they were also well aware that their opponents were geniuses from various academies. Thus, it would definitely not be an easy task for them to rise above others under the cruel competition. Big Brother Mu Chen and the rest will definitely make it to the finals. Yushi clenched her fist as she firmly spoke. She refused to believe that the undefeated figure in her heart would be defeated by someone else. "We hope so as well." Yi Qingling rubbed her head. A few days ago, she heard from Sana that a monstrous figure had appeared from the Saint Spiritual Academy. The name of that fellow was called Ji Xian, and in addition, he was a sworn enemy of Mu Chen's. So much so that even the elders of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had slightly heavy expressions when they mentioned his name. Thus, one could expect how monstrous he was. If this fellow targeted Mu Chen, it was definitely a worrisome matter. Although Mu Chen was very powerful, was he able to maintain his foothold while dealing with that guy whom even the elders of the academy would have their expressions changed just from mentioning his name? Yi Qingling lightly sighed in her heart as she felt a little uneasy. Yushi and Sulinga seemed to have sensed the uneasiness in Yi Qingling as they exchanged a glance and became silent as well. Dong! Suddenly, just when they went into silence, an ancient bell rang out as it resonated between these heavens and earth. The bell's ringing spread throughout the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. The hustle and bustle that was filled with vitality suddenly went silent. Countless students were blankly staring at each other. It was after a brief moment later that they recovered and understood the meaning behind the bell. Yi Qingling, Yushi, and Sulinga, who were seated on the mountain, were dazed for an instant, before abruptly raising their heads. Their eyes were looking at the ancient bell in surprise as excitement and nervousness rose up in their hearts. Whoosh! Whoosh! Up in the sky, there were screeches of wind that rang out from every single direction. In an instant, the entire academy went into an uproar. Everyone knew what that bell meant. The Great Spiritual Academy Tournament's finals was coming. The Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy fell into silence as the ringing bell reverberated throughout the heavens and earth. However, that silence lasted for a brief moment, before it was ruined by the quaking cheers. The final battle of the Great Spiritual Academy Tournament that they had been anticipating for half a year had arrived at last. The entire academy was ignited by the fiery atmosphere as innumerable students were looking at the bell with excitement, expectations, and nervousness in their eyes. They yearned to know the results of the two teams that represented their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy to participate in the Great Spiritual Academy Tournament. Whoosh! Hasty and hurried whooshing sounds resounded in the sky as a sea of humans quickly gathered. Those that were intending to enter the lightning territory to cultivate turned around as they rushed for the direction of the bell in excitement. The news had spread at lightning speed into the lightning territory and spirit convergence array, waking those that were enclosed in their cultivation. When they heard that the final battle of the Great Spiritual Academy Tournament was approaching, they could no longer be bothered to cultivate as they quickly stood up and rushed for the academy. In an instant, the atmosphere in the academy boiled. As the boiling atmosphere started to spread, the usually closed door located on a certain secluded mountain far away opened as an elegant silhouette strode forth. That silhouette was dressed in a snow-white dress, with her hair draped down to her waist like a waterfall. She was holding onto a simple and unadorned scroll with complicated spiritual array runes on the surface of it. Her complexion was lucid and elegant. In the past, her face was filled with indifference, as if there was nothing in this world that could disturb her heart. However, at this moment, the indifferent expression that she had been wearing in the past had now shown a rare tint of vividness as a smear of joy rushed forth in her gorgeous eyes. She stood outside the house as her gaze was directed at the bell. Her rosy lips were slightly lifted as she revealed a charming smile, which had a distinctive feature that could not be reproduced by others. Big Sister Ling Shi, will Big Brother Mu Chen be able to enter the finals? At her rear, Sana asked as she blinked her big eyes. She still had her black ponytail. Excitement covered her face because she had finally heard news from Mu Chen and the rest after waiting for half a year. Certainly. Ling Shi answered with no hesitation. Mu Chen is the child of Aunt Jing. How hard is it for him to get into the finals? Although Ling Shi understood how intense the competition in the Great Spiritual Academy Tournament was, a small part of the reverence that she had for Aunt Jing was shifted onto Mu Chen. Thus, she did not think that Mu Chen would be weaker compared to anyone of his age. Sana covered her mouth as she secretly laughed. Looks like Big Sister Ling Shi is the most confident about Big Brother Mu Chen. Some time ago, even the Dean and the rest were very worried about it because the strength of Big Brother Mu Chen's enemy is a little too powerful. Furthermore, ever since Big Brother Mu Chen left, Big Sister Ling Shi has never smiled once. But you become so happy the moment you hear news with regards to him. Ling Shi's face blushed for a moment as she narrowed her eyes and shooting a dangerous glance at Sana. Looks like the time you spent in the spiritual array house was a little too short. I'll increase it next time. Oh? No, Big Sister Ling Shi, I'm in the wrong. Sana spoke in a pitiful manner as her face paled from Ling Shi's words. Ling Shi softly flicked Sana's pearly forehead, letting her off. Her gaze was on the bell as a tint of graveness surfaced in her eyes. After regaining her calm, she also understood that Mu Chen must be having a difficult time. All in all, that person called Ji Xian truly was a troublesome opponent. With that fellow's current strength, he might even be comparable to some elders in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. She wasn't skeptical if Mu Chen could make it to the finals. However, if he truly encountered Ji Xian in the finals, it would definitely be a ferocious battle between colossal titans. Even for those clans with long and deep history, Ji Xian's talent could be considered pretty good. Whoosh! Just as the atmosphere in the academy was boiling to new heights, several figures had also flown out of the inner palace of the academy as they stood on the sky, with Dean Taikang in front. Right now, they were also looking at the bell with a little nervousness. Although the two teams that represented their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy weren't weak, they were aware that the intensity of the competition present in this tournament far surpassed those in the past decades. Those participating were the strongest as well. Thus, it wasn't an easy task to acquire achievements in this tournament. However, no matter how challenging it was, they had no other choice but to compete. Their title as one of the 5 great academies was on the line in this round's tournament. If they lost the title, it would definitely have a huge impact on the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. They couldn't bear to imagine how far the morale in the academy would fall if that happens. If that happens, it would definitely have a fatal impact on the entire academy. Dean Taikeng looked towards his rear, exchanged looks with Hallmaster Mo Yu and the other elders, and saw the hint of graveness in each other's eyes. "Dean, let's get prepared to open the battle domain." Hallmaster Mo Yu spoke in a soft voice. Right now, worrying was useless, and what they could do was to open the world and see if Mu Chen and the other representatives managed to achieve any results. Dean Taikang hurriedly nodded his head as his hand seal started to change. A ray of spiritual light that seemed like a meteor shot forward from his fingertips as it streaked across the horizon, before heavily striking against the bell. Duong! A long-lasting bell-ringing sound resounded as it resonated again. Buzz! Buzz! Along with the bell ringing, golden light poured out in waves from the bell as the entire area looked as if it was being filled with the golden light. The golden light slowly came together in the sky, distorted the space as it formed a golden passage. This passage leads to the battle domain, a small space meant for the final battle of the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Aside from the freshmen, all the remaining students are allowed to enter. You are not allowed to obstruct or act in a disorderly manner. Otherwise, you will be punished as per the academy rules. Dean Taikeng swept his gaze around the entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy as his thunderous voice rang out in everyone's ears. Yes. Hearing his announcement, innumerable students were filled with excitement, leaving the freshmen in grief. Although there was a spiritual projection screen, how could it be compared to watching it on the spot? However, Dean Taikeng gave no regards to their grief. He moved as he turned into a streak of light and entered the golden passage with Hallmaster Mo Yu following closely behind him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Screeches of wind were heard from everywhere. The vast amounts of figures were like locusts as they soared towards the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, entering the golden passage. On the mountain peak, Ling Shi hesitated as she looked at the golden passage. "Big sister Ling Shi, let's go as well. I want to know the situation of big brother Mu Chen." Sana blinked her wide eyes as she spoke while tugging on Ling Shi's sleeves. Hearing her plea, Ling Shi lifted her brows for an instant, before replying as if nothing had happened, "Okay then, since you want to watch, I'll bring you to take a look at it." As she spoke, she saw Sana secretly laughing with her mouth covered. In an instant, her face flushed red as she shot a furious glance at the latter as the little lass actually dared to make fun of her. Ling Shi extended her hand as she held onto Sana's tiny hand. With a wave of her hand, they turned into a streak of light and flew away. "Let's go as well." Yi Qingling spoke with excitement in the Goddess Luo Association. "But, I'm a freshman." Yushi pouted as she looked as if she would burst into tears at any moment. "Don't worry about it, we'll sneak in. Although there are guards from the punishment hall, they have to give our Goddess Luo Association some face. Back then, Mu Chen defeated 3 seniors of the punishment hall, so they wouldn't dare do anything to us from the Goddess Luo Association." Su Linga made a lovable smile as she incited. "Okay." Yushi hesitated for a brief moment and, eventually, her feelings overwhelmed her rationale as she nodded while biting her lips. "Let's go." Yi Qingling waved her hand as she took the initiative to move first. Behind her, Yushi and Su Linga immediately followed as the 3 of them joined into the streaks of light, entering the golden passage. When they entered the golden passage, Yi Qingling, Yushi, and Su Linga could sense the distinct unstable ripples in the space. Golden light flooded their sights as they felt dizziness. Fortunately, the dizziness only lasted for a brief moment, before the radiant golden light gradually disappeared. Immediately, the scene before their eyes started to change as their mouths widened, bit by bit. A vast golden world had appeared right before their eyes as it became filled with noise. There was no end to the number of people. In the sky a long distance away, there were similar golden vortex passages with people constantly exiting them. Judging from the clothes they wore, they were evidently students from the other spiritual academies. Nearly all the large-scaled spiritual academies had opened the battle world, allowing their students to enter and observe the battle. Although the multitude filled the area, students of different spiritual academies were separated as they gathered amongst themselves as they stood in the sky. The grandiose scene was extremely spectacular. The majestic formations made Yi Qingling's group feel dumbfounded, and they recovered from their shock a long time later. They looked up ahead. There was a vast floating golden-colored stone platform that engulfed the golden light, separating the stone platform with the outside area. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as a multitude of people gathered in this region, countless golden lights fell onto the stone platform, and as the golden light dissipated, countless teams wearing different clothing appeared. These were all the teams that had participated in the Great Spiritual Academy tournament. Countless gazes filled with respect were directed at those teams. It didn't matter if they were from the same academy as them, the fact that they fought for their own spiritual academy deserved respect. Dong! The antique bell rang out once again. This time, everyone's eyes were blazing as they looked at the central region of the golden-colored stone platform, which was radiating with golden light. The uproars that filled every corner went into silence as everyone's eyes widened. They knew that the top 8 teams that would proceed to the final battle would soon make their appearance. A colossal golden battle stage appeared, as if a god had descended on the world, and remained hovering in the sky. A golden ocean of radiant light covered the region. The sight of it was extremely grandiose. The 4 sides around the vast battle stage was already occupied by students of various spiritual academies. There was no end to the sea of people. The students from various spiritual academies staying in the region belonging to their own academy as screens of light shone down and dividing them based on their factions. After all, there were too many people here, preventing the possibility of fights between the various academies if those vigorous students were overwhelmed by their emotions when the tournament starts. Since such an incident took place in the past, the 5 great academies carried out such perfect measures to prevent such incidents from taking place again. At this moment, everyone was looking at the central region of the battle stage. The golden light started to spread out as a golden platform of stairs took form under the countless gazes. There were 8 flights of steps, and the highest level was roughly 300 meters in size, a golden light shaped into a golden lotus that looked extremely gorgeous. Only those in the top 8 could have the qualifications to stand here on the golden stairs, commonly known as the stairs of the final battle. Whoosh! Just when everyone's sight was gathered on the golden platform, the space above the platform started to distort as 5 figures appeared. The moment those 5 figures appeared, golden light gathered behind them that formed a huge light throne as they overlooked the vast golden battle stage. Countless students from the various spiritual academies that were present in this region shifted their gazes onto the 5 figures as reverence reflected in their eyes. Those 5 people were the leaders of the current 5 great academies. The deans of the 5 great academies. Dean Taikang sat at the last to the right with an indifferent expression. His eyes were as abstruse as the starry skies. Also, although he looked ordinary, an indescribable power was emitting from him, intimidating this entire region. The one on the right of Dean Taikang was an elder wearing an azure robe. His brows and mustache were ash-grey, while his skin was as fair as an infant. An azure pine, which was similar to jade, seemed to be growing on his palm as it swayed and flickered in the azure light. Along with it, even the surrounding space seemed to be swaying as well. He was the dean of the Azure Sky Spiritual Academy, Dean Qian Song. The first on the left was a dried-up old man with a small figure and a pair of drowsy eyes, and was rubbing his mustache with his bony palm. However, despite how he looked, he had an overbearing name. Dean of the Martial Spiritual Academy, Wu Qian Wang. Seated beside Dean Wu Qian Wang was a gorgeous woman. She wore a beautiful long dress, along with a graceful and luxurious appearance. Her hair was coiled together as it looked like a phoenix's tail and had glossy jade-like skin. Compared to the 4 other deans, she appeared extremely young. However, everyone knew that aside from the Saint Spiritual Academy's dean, no one could surpass her in terms of seniority. She was the dean of the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy, Dean Tang Chiu. Amongst the 5 thrones, there was one that was exceptionally prominent, sat by an imposing figure and whose true age could not be identified. He had ash-grey hair, while his face looked as if it was carved, looking rather handsome. He sat indifferently on his throne, but he was like a colossal mountain that stood towering, instilling fear in others. This person was the dean of the Saint Spiritual Academy, Dean Tiansheng. Amongst the 5 great academies, his name was the most resounding with unfathomable strength. The 5 great figures represented the pinnacle strength amongst the countless spiritual academies, is a tremendous figure in the field of academics. As the 5 great deans showed themselves, they greeted each other as they exchanged looks and nodded their heads with one another. Deans from the various spiritual academies, please take a seat. A smile surfaced on the sculpture-carved face of Dean Tiansheng as his spring-filled voice rang out to every corner of this space. As he spoke, space distorted in the sky again as numerous figures appeared in a flash as they stepped on the space. All of them were emitting terrifying power, despite the fact that there weren't any powerful spiritual energy ripples around them. However, everyone knew that those people before their eyes were the pillars of the numerous spiritual academies with extraordinary strength. When the deans of various spiritual academies made their appearance, they cupped their hands in the direction of the 5 great deans. They waved their hands, gathering light to form light thrones in the sky and sat on them, overlooking the earth. Dean Taikang shot a glance at Dean Tiansheng, who was unconsciously occupying the lead as he slightly pulled the corner of his lips. Does Tiansheng really think of himself as the head of the 5 great academies? Although the 3 other deans did not speak, there were glimpses of resent in their eyes. Dean Tiansheng acted as if he had not noticed their unhappiness as he shifted his gaze onto Dean Taikang and smiled. Dean Taikang, the Great Spiritual Academy tournament this round is rather crucial to your Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Dean Taikang replied with a smile as well, I do not need your reminder, Dean Tiansheng. We, the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, will definitely do our best. That is for certain. Dean Tiansheng smiled as he nodded his head. I also hope that the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy will perform well this time. Otherwise, it would be a loss to our 4 great academies if you lose your placing as one of the 5 great academies. Lights flashed in the eyes of the 3 other deans. Naturally, they could make out the verbal confrontation between the 2 deans. However, they weren't surprised by it as the Saint Spiritual Academy and Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy didn't have a good relationship to begin with. Back then, Dean Tiansheng tried to assist a powerful academy to ascend up to the position of the 5 great spiritual academies so that he would have more support and be closer to being the head of the academies. But who could have expected that the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy would suddenly appear and seize a place of the 5 great academies, wrecking the plans of the Saint Spiritual Academy? There's no point talking, let's begin the Golden Battle Stairs. I also yearn to know which academy will be in the top 8. Dean Tang Chiu of Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy displayed a mature elegant smile which was very charming. Ha ha, Dean Tang Chiu is right. It's a waste of time wasting saliva if the students' abilities aren't up there. Dean Tiansheng, although you have Ji Xian in your Saint Spiritual Academy, don't underestimate the brats from my academy. The small-figured Martial Spiritual Academy's dean spoke with an eye-narrowing smile. Among the 5, he had the worst appearance. But when facing this old man, even Dean Tiansheng didn't dare to speak as he nodded with a faint smile on his face. The 5 great deans acted at the same time as they flicked their fingers, spreading 5 spiritual lights that shrouded the Golden Battle Stairs, which attracted the attention of everyone present. TSSSSSHHSSSSSSSSSHHH. As the spiritual light spread out, everyone witnessed the distortion of the space above the Golden Battle Stairs. The atmosphere in this region froze as all of the noise turned into silence with innumerable gazes fixed on the Golden Battle Stairs. Under the innumerable gazes, the golden light on the 8th level started to dissipate as 5 silhouettes showed themselves, slowly being presented before the countless gazes. Fang Yun and his 4 teammates showed themselves. They had already worn their academy badges and, thus, they were recognized the instant they appeared. Rank 8, 9 Cauldron Spiritual Academy's team. Truly formidable, no wonder they were once in the 5 great academies. When Fang Yun's team appeared, an uproar instantly exploded in this region. As the uproar exploded, the golden light in the remaining levels of the golden battle stairs started to dissipate as one powerful team after another appeared in the eyes of the crowd. Which academy is in the 7th rank? Looks like the undefeated spiritual academy. They should be an ordinary spiritual academy, right? They actually made it to the best 8? How is that possible? Where did the Blood God Academy at rank 6 come from? I've never heard of that name before. Truly well deserving of the Great Spiritual Academy tournament, truly hidden dragons, and crouching tigers. No matter what spiritual academy they came from, their strengths are well proven by the fact that they are in the best 8. Rank 5 is the team from the Azure Sky Spiritual Academy, led by Liu Qingyun, right? Haha, the teams from the 5 great spiritual academies are finally appearing. Rank 4 is from the Martial Spiritual Academy? Heavens! That's Wu Ling, the absolute genius of the Martial Spiritual Academy. Even someone like him was only rank 4? Just how fearsome are the remaining 3? When the 5 powerful teams descended on the golden platform, an uproar exploded between the heavens and earth as countless voices soared into the skies. Many people had excited expressions on their faces as the quality of the Great Spiritual Academy tournament had far surpassed their imaginations. Seeing this scene, the 5 great deans seated on their light thrones had different expressions flickering in their eyes. Dean Wu of the Martial Spiritual Academy snorted with his eyes widened. Clearly, he was unsatisfied with the fact that Wu Ling had only managed to achieve rank 4. Dean Taikang had a heavy expression with the light in his eyes constantly changing. 5 out of the best 8 have already appeared, leaving the remaining 3 hidden and, until now, there wasn't a single team from his Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. There were only 2 outcomes to this situation: either the team from their Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy had not made it to the best 8, or the results achieved by the team had surpassed his imagination. 2 outcomes, separated by hell and heaven. The difference between the 2 outcomes raised billows even in the heart of Dean Taikang. Even Dean Taikang couldn't maintain his calm, not to mention about the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. In the region gathered by the students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, every single one of them could not sit or stand still as the intense atmosphere nearly choked them. Standing at the front, Yi Qingling, Su Linga, and Yu Shi's faces were filled with nervousness. Even Elder Lingxi was tightly pursing her lips as her hand, which was holding onto Sunna's tiny hand, was gripping tighter, causing Sunna to have a bitter expression, but she didn't dare to speak up. Buzz! The golden light started to, once again, spread out on the remaining 3 platforms as the silhouettes of the 3 teams started to reveal themselves. Everyone had their eyes fixed on the remaining platforms. Golden light gathered and dissipated in the end, revealing the 3 remaining teams, who represented the 3 strongest teams under the countless gazes. However, when the 3 teams were revealed, the atmosphere between the heavens and earth froze in an instant. The brilliant golden battle stairs stood towering on the golden battle stage. At this instant, the best 3 teams were thoroughly revealed under all the gazes on the top 3 platforms of the golden battle stairs. However, when those gazes were shot over, the heavens and earth went into silence as numerous people couldn't help widening their eyes. On the 3rd level of the golden battle stairs were 5 charming girls, especially the one that stood at the front, who had instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. The girl held onto a golden long spear with her hair draped down. Golden battle armor wrapped around her slender and flexible figure, possessing picturesque looks. Her phoenix-like eyes made her look arrogant, a fair neck made her look like a swan, a voluptuous chest with an heart-shaking arc, a slim and tight waist with a snow-white patch beneath her skirt was so beautiful that nothing more could be imagined. Although the 4 other girls beside her were appealing, they were a little dull standing beside her as she was simply too dazzling. Countless gazes were revolving around her body, with many of those gazes radiating with light and blazing with flames. Whoa! When that team appeared, an alarming burst of cheers exploded from the direction of the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy. That was basically the most glamorous region as countless girls were cheering with excited expressions since the team that had just appeared represented their academy. When the students from the other spiritual academies heard the cheers, they involuntarily directed their sights over as their eyes became filled with longing. After all, amongst the 5 great academies, the male students liked the Myriad Spiritual Academy the most, since no guys could resist the wonderful feeling of being surrounded by tens of thousands of flowers. Senior Sister Qingxian made it to the best three. She's truly worthy of being someone I worship. But I imagined Big Sister Qingxian taking first. From the looks of it, there are truly hidden dragons and crouching tigers in this great spiritual academy tournament. Under the soft and delicate voices that filled the air, someone finally directed their gazes at the second level as another team was revealed. That team was dressed in white and every single one their momentum was out of the ordinary. But their facial expressions at this instant weren't as excited as they had imagined, as they had gloom all over their faces, especially the one leading whose face was ashen. Rank 2 is the team from the Saint Spiritual Academy. Their captain is that Ji Xian, right? I have long heard of his name. Reportedly, he was the most popular predicted champion. How did he end up in second place? Not sure about that, either. Even Ji Xian only took second. Who's in first? An uproar filled the sky as they abruptly shifted their gazes upwards and stopped at the peak of the golden battle stairs. That area was the most eye-catching at this instant. The light that filled the heavens and earth gathered as the golden light dissipated, revealing 5 silhouettes in the eyes of everyone. The one standing at the front was a youth dressed in navy clothes. His figure was tall, like a spear, with outstanding looks. His black pupils were as abstruse as a starry sky, and the outline of his face didn't make him look young and inexperienced. On the contrary, there was a smear of decisiveness and self-confidence that was rarely seen for those at his age. However, be it his appearance or temperament, he wasn't in any way inferior to Ji Xian. Standing beside this youth was a graceful figure. She wore a navy dress, and beneath that dress of hers was an impressive figure that outlined her curves, instilling a rush of excitement for those that were looking at her. The fact that made countless others gasp in surprise was that she wasn't in any way inferior to Wen Qingxian. Her skin was as white as the snow with moon-curved brows. Especially her crystal-clear pupils, which seemed to possess magic power, intoxicating others. Looking at her, no matter what troubles they had, all seemed to disappear by looking into her clear pupils. Her silvery river-long hair fluttered in the wind, and in the next moment, 2 words rose in everyone's heart. Absolutely breathtaking. Facing such an outstanding girl, even those girls from the myriad spiritual academy who had extremely high judgment fell into silence, as they did not dare to make a comparison between her and Wen Qingxian. Standing beside that girl was another beauty. Her hair draped down that made her look exceptionally gentle. Although she wasn't as breathtaking as the former, her gentle temperament was still charming. Standing beside her were 2 towering youths, one with handsome features, while the other was emitting a disdainful temperament. With a glance, anyone could tell that they weren't any ordinary goons. Regardless of temperament or appearance, this team made others gasp in surprise. The heavens and earth seemed to have fallen into silence for a brief instant, as if they were intimidated by this team that stood at the top. It's the team from our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Suddenly, a voice filled with excitement broke the silence. Countless students from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy direction had their faces glow red from excitement as they yelled. Astonishment and joy surged from everyone's eyes, as the shock brought by the scene before them was simply too strong. They never, in their wildest imagination, imagined that Mu Chen and his team would make it to first place. They actually managed to surpass Ji Xian, Wen Qingxian, Wu Ling, and Liu Qingyun from the remaining 4 of the 5 great academies. Big Brother Mu is mighty. Innumerable students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy yelled with their faces flushed red, as the eyes of everyone were filled with excitement and deafening cheers thundered. Aside from the time when they managed to squeeze into the 5 great academies, they never had such similar achievements. Amidst the thunderous roars, Yi Qingling, Su Ling'e, and Yushi couldn't control their widening mouths as their eyes were filled with shock. Big Brother Mu Chen is simply far too formidable. Yushi was so excited that her face flushed red, even her speech stuttered. Her eyes were filled with admiration, as the achievement by Mu Chen and his team far surpassed the expectations of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. What a monster! Yi Qingling also couldn't help herself as she muttered. Su Ling'e had stars flashing in her eyes as well, that even as someone with her barbaric personality had troubles controlling her emotions from the overexcitement. Big Brother Mu Chen is too great. Sunna cheered along. Lingxi felt relieved in her heart. Half a year of separation, that youth had been growing up at a rapid speed as he seemed more mature as well. The excitement from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy pulled back the students of the other academies from their astonishment. Every single one of them had a complicated gaze, especially the students of the Saint Spiritual Academy. The whole time, they believed that the numero uno belonged to Ji Xian, thus the current situation had caught them unprepared. What is there to be proud of? It's just the elimination round. The finals have yet to begin. Criticism spoke from some students of the Saint Spiritual Academy since they couldn't bear how cheerful the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy group was. The Myriad Spiritual Academy also had countless delicate gazes shoot over at the top of the golden battle stairs. I never imagined that the numero uno of the elimination round would go to the team from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Their captain is quite handsome, but why haven't I heard of such a powerful person of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy in the past? Whispers resounded from the Myriad Spiritual Academy as many girls were a little curious since they were unfamiliar with Mu Chen. His name is Mu Chen, a freshman from the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Amongst all the curious whispers, a voice suddenly rang out. All the girls were looking at the direction of the voice in astonishment and saw a green-dressed girl, who was looking at the dazzling figure on the golden battle stage with a complicated gaze. The appearance of the girl was also extremely gorgeous. Even amongst the flowers, she was still rather eye-catching. Her black hair was tied into a ponytail, with her ponytail curving in at her waist area, which made her look more lively. "MHM? Chiena, you know him," a voice of exclamation sounded out from a girl. Chiena and he grew up together as childhood sweethearts. A red-dressed girl smiled as she covered her mouth. She was Hong Ling, originated from the Northern Spiritual Academy as well. The Chiena that they were referring to was Tang Chiena, who grew up together with Mu Chen and went to the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy later. In just 2 years, the young girl from before had become increasingly more slender and elegant and became even more charming. Her eyes were fixed onto that figure, whom she had not seen for a long time. Although back in the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen was already very outstanding, she never imagined that he would be able to achieve such a feat 2 years later. Ha ha, so it turns out that Chiena and he had that relationship. Why don't you secretly tell him to lose to big sister Qing Xian in the finals? Maybe our dean will make an exception for him to join our academy. The girls that stood by the side laughed. Tang Chiena's face flushed red as she shot them an annoyed gaze. Shortly after, her gaze was focused on that figure again as a hint of sentiment that was hard to defect flashed across her eyes when she saw the girl standing beside him, who was comparable to Wen Qingxian. She couldn't stop herself from biting her rosy lips. Not knowing why, she felt a little regret in her decision to enter the Myriad Phoenix Spiritual Academy. Despite so, she still felt happy in her heart to see how outstanding he was. Tang Chiena pursed her lips as they slid down an unset arc. However, it was only a brief moment, before she firmly lifted them up as she clenched her small fist and spoke in her heart. "Mu Chen, you can do it. If Uncle Mu saw how outstanding you were right now, he would definitely be very happy." This episode ends here. Thanks you for watching.